Margaret Parker, a retired police officer in her early 60s, had dedicated her life to service and sacrifice. After spending 35 years on the force, she finally stepped away, her soul still weighed down by everything she had seen. The memories of crime, suffering, and injustice remained vivid. But more than anything, what haunted her was the helplessness she felt when the system she believed in failed to protect the innocent. Living quietly in a small town, Margaret found peace in tending her garden and occasional visits to the local diner. But one day felt different. Word had spread that former President Donald Trump was coming to town for a community gathering. The news stirred something inside her, a long-held question she had never found the right moment to ask. Margaret wasn't drawn by politics or party lines. She was simply curious about the man who once held the power to shape change. Would he listen? Could he understand? That morning she stood in line, holding her aged leather purse tightly. Around her, the crowd buzzed with anticipation, but Margaret's thoughts were fixed. When her turn came, she stepped forward, looked Trump in the eye, and asked the question she'd been carrying for years. "Mr. Trump," she began, "what does justice really mean to you?" The crowd hushed. The question, though simple, carried weight. Everyone leaned in, waiting. Trump paused. His usual confident expression softened into something more reflective. The crowd, used to quick remarks and sharp responses, fell silent. Margaret's heart raced. Would he answer from the heart? "Justice," Trump finally said, "goes beyond laws and courts. It's about fairness, making sure every person has the chance to live with dignity and opportunity." His tone was calm, and there was an unexpected sincerity in his eyes. Margaret hadn't anticipated such a thoughtful response. "I've seen a lot over the years," she said quietly, "and sometimes the system lets down the very people it's meant to protect. How do we fix that?" Trump nodded slowly. "Change doesn't come from division or anger," he said. "It comes from unity, from leaders listening, and communities working together. Justice isn't a final goal. It's a continuous journey." Margaret's expression showed a mix of hope and doubt. After decades battling crime, often feeling isolated, she asked, "Do you really think that's achievable?" "I do," Trump said without pause, "because I believe in people, their power to rebuild trust and create real change." For a brief moment, politics faded. In its place was a shared desire for something better. Margaret allowed a small smile. Maybe, just maybe, this moment marked a new beginning. After the event, Margaret couldn't shake the feeling that something important had shifted. She had expected scripted answers, but instead found someone willing to talk about values they both held close. Back home, she sat by her kitchen window, looking at old photos, snapshots of her time in uniform, proud memories mixed with painful ones. She remembered the children she'd sworn to protect, some lost to the very system meant to shield them. She felt compelled to learn more about Trump's perspective. The next day, she wrote a letter to his office, requesting a meeting. To her, Surprise, a response came quickly. He wanted to speak with her. On the day of the meeting, Margaret dressed with care. She was prepared to share her truth, what justice looked like away from headlines and politics. They met in a modest room, far from cameras and crowds. Trump greeted her warmly. "I want to hear everything," he said. "Not the sound bites, the real stories." Margaret took a breath and began. She spoke about why she joined the force, to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. She recalled being one of the few women in a male-dominated profession, the challenges she faced, and the sense of purpose it gave her. She talked about the neighborhoods she patrolled, places filled with struggle, but also resilience. "Justice isn't just catching criminals," she said. "It's understanding what leads people to make the choices they do. It's about prevention and healing." Trump listened closely, asking questions. Not the kind reporters usually ask, but ones that showed genuine interest. Margaret told him about a young man she once tried to help. Caught in a cycle of violence and poverty, he ended up in prison despite her efforts. "I couldn't save him," she admitted, voice trembling. Trump's face softened. "That's heartbreaking," he said. "It shouldn't be like that." Margaret looked for hope in his eyes. "How do we stop that cycle?" "By investing in communities," he replied. "In education, jobs, and support systems. We have to build bridges, not just barriers." The conversation turned to police, reform, an often contentious topic. "The system's not perfect," Trump admitted, "but we can't discard the good with the bad. Most officers want to do right." Margaret agreed, but stressed the need for trust and accountability. "We can't fix what people don't believe in. Without community trust, everyone loses." They discussed better training, community engagement, and mental health resources. Margaret shared examples of both heroic and failed policing. Trump listened with growing respect. "We need honesty about our failures and commitment to restoring faith," he said. For Margaret, it was rare to feel aligned with someone from such a different world. But here was a man who acknowledged the gray areas in a black-and-white world. As the meeting ended, Trump looked her in the eye. "Thank you for your service and your honesty. It means more than you know." Margaret nodded. Perhaps this conversation could open doors for others. Back home, she reflected. For the first time in years, she felt genuine hope about the future of justice. The next morning, she shared her experience over coffee with former colleagues. Some were skeptical, others curious, but all agreed. Real change comes from real conversations. Word spread. Residents from different backgrounds reached out to Margaret wanting to share their experiences. She began attending community meetings. Again, this time, not just to observe, but to serve as a bridge between citizens and leaders. She realized that justice wasn't a destination. It was a shared path that demanded compassion and courage. Meanwhile, Trump's team, moved by Margaret's story, began working on a new initiative focused on supporting retired officers and at-risk youth. Margaret knew it would be a long road, but she was ready. Justice, she had learned, was something worth pursuing together. A few weeks later, Margaret got a call. "Mrs. Parker," a voice said, "Mr. Trump would like you to speak at a town hall about your work and the future of justice." Margaret hesitated, then agreed. This was a chance to raise more voices. At the event, she stood before the crowd and shared her journey, not just as a former officer, but as someone committed to hope. Her story moved people. Some wiped away tears. When she finished, Trump approached her. "You did great," he said. Margaret smiled. "We did this together." Their partnership wasn't based on politics, but on a mutual vision for change. As time went on, programs launched, focusing on officer wellness and rebuilding community trust. Margaret began mentoring young officers and helping former offenders find new paths. The town started to shift. The divide between us and them began to fade. But the biggest transformation was within Margaret. She felt lighter, no longer weighed down by doubt. One afternoon, walking through a local park, a boy playing basketball waved at her. "Are you the police lady who talks to Mr. Trump?" he asked. Margaret chuckled. "Yes, I am." "Thanks for helping people like my dad," he said softly. She knelt beside him. "Thank you for reminding me why this matters." In that moment, Margaret knew justice wasn't just about rules. It was about heart. Later, she received a letter from Trump. Inside was a short note. "Margaret, your courage has inspired more than you know. Let's keep going." Enclosed was an invitation to visit a rehabilitation center. Margaret accepted. There, she met individuals who had rebuilt their lives through the new programs. Their stories reminded her, justice was not just about punishment, but healing. At another event, Margaret met Lisa, a young woman who overcame addiction with the program's help. Lisa spoke publicly, crediting Margaret for her second chance. Tears welled in Margaret's eyes. This was the change she had dreamed of. Trump approached quietly. "Your question started all this," he said. "Never underestimate the power of one voice." Margaret nodded. "And never underestimate the power of listening." Together they had ignited a movement built on empathy and action. As the movement gained momentum, Margaret was invited to national forums on criminal justice. Her voice carried beyond her town. Her message was simple: justice must be human. Trump continued supporting the cause, referencing her wisdom often. Despite their different worlds, they remained united by purpose. One day, a young officer named Daniel visited her. Eager to learn, he said, "I want to be like you." Margaret smiled. "You can be better. Just listen and care." Mentoring became her mission. For her, justice wasn't just about now, it was about tomorrow. As their town's transformation drew national attention, some critics accused them of political games. Margaret dismissed it. "This isn't politics," she said. "It's about people." Trump echoed her words. They stayed focused on the work ahead. At one forum, Margaret was asked about her greatest obstacle. She paused. Fear. Fear that change can't happen, that no one's listening. Then she smiled. But courage is just fear that's prayed its prayers. Applause erupted. That day, Margaret's story gave more than hope. It gave